The power of media is achieving some common sense, although we still only get half-truths from this government, which I'll talk to you about in this video, because it's a little bit infuriating and I'm here to tell you the truth. Now, some of you, 175,000 odd of you, saw my story yesterday on my short, which is an experimental short news update thing, which hopefully you'll like, about this situation here, where this lady was fined £150 for pouring a tiny little bit of coffee into a drain before she got onto a bus because she didn't want to spill it on the bus and so on. Now, immediately she had, I think it was 3 officious enforcement officers chasing her, demanding her ID and fining her £150 for pouring this coffee into a drain. Now, the council has done a U-turn on this, but before we get to that, I've noticed something really strange as well. Some of you, quite a lot of you in fact, hundreds of you I've received messages say that you've been unsubscribed from my channel or channels here, and without any effort on your part, you've just been unsubscribed, which is really infuriating because I really do try to grow these channels, and many of you subscribe, obviously hundreds of thousands of you subscribe, and the powers are working against me and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I've emailed my contact at YouTube and I've said, please have a look at what's going on. This is not really fair. So I apologize to you if you've taken the effort to subscribe and you've been unsubscribed, but please do check and please do that, and I'm going to talk to YouTube about it. So thank you very much. But back to this story here, because this, well, it was ridiculous to begin with, but although technically correct, there might be, well, there is a provision under the Environmental Protection Act where they can fine you for disposing of any waste in a place that you're not supposed to. And that includes, technically speaking, coffee down a drain. Although common sense should absolutely prevail, and therefore now the power of media, I suspect only because lots of people have talked about it, and I've done my small part by 175,000 of you seeing my video embarrassing this council, making them look stupid. They've now done a U-turn on the fine, so let's take a look at this story from the BBC. Now, she said that she thought she was acting responsibly when she poured a small amount of coffee from her reusable cup down the drain, rather than risk spilling it on the bus because she was about to go to work. She was stopped by 3 enforcement officers at the bus stop near Richmond Station, given a fine under Section 33 of the Environmental Protection Act 1990, which makes it an offence to dispose of waste in a way that's likely to pollute land or water. Coffee down a drain, people. Now, there's other stuff that goes down a drain as well. It's sort of the biggest sort of not my problem anymore when you flush the chain. And so how can you compare that with coffee? It just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But Richmond upon Thames councillors now said that it's cancelled the fine as it was likely that her appeal would have been successful. And the council also said it was a minor contravention and that she agreed not to repeat it. So she's had to agree not to pour any more coffee down the drain. Before they cancelled the fine, BBC News said that she'd noticed the bus approaching. She was pouring away a tiny little bit. She said as soon as she turned around, she noticed 3 men, enforcement officers, chasing her, stopped her immediately and demanded the fine. Now, we've got to this stage where things are utterly ridiculous. I mean, 3 enforcement officers. Now, they're obviously paid by the local authority, whether that's directly or by way of a third party. What an absolute waste of taxpayer resources to pay these sort of enforcement officers to chase this kind of thing when you see the photographs of waste and all sorts of stuff dumped in country lanes, in fields and all in car parks all over the place. That is what they should be looking at, not a lady pouring a tiny little bit of coffee down a drain. Enough said about that. It was ridiculous, and we appear to have resulted in common sense. Now, on a personal note, just for a moment, just the other day, I published a short on self-defense techniques, and I was amazed at how many people didn't know that I'm actually a black belt and that black belt barrister wasn't just a play on words. So many of you know that I take my fitness and my training and my health very seriously, particularly in the last year or two. When I've given up alcohol, I've made a concerted effort to have more vitamins, drink more water, and all of this sort of stuff. So to that end, I'm really pleased that I work with a company called Holy, who produce iced teas, energy drinks, and hydration drinks in a whole range of different flavors. And they've released some great new ones for Halloween, a tangerine tarantula, no tricks or treats, just tangerine flavored, and this acai berry, which is absolutely divine, which I'm going to show you right now. I personally like to use one of their bottles, which you can find on the website, and all it takes, so you can see how easy it is one of these spoons that you put into the water here, and then you give it a great shake so that it mixes together, and then you have an absolutely delicious drink which is full of vitamins, antioxidants, and no, quote, rubbish that you might find in other drinks. And I actually think I might have found a new favorite flavor, because for the longest time it's been this one, which is the strawberry and kiwi, which I have to say remains one of my favorites of all time among the dozens of flavors that they've got. But now I'm going to try the tangerine tarantula as well. So again, just one scoop, this time with one of their shakers, which you can find on their website as well. We pop the lid on and give it a shake. And now this, I must say, is really interesting because it's got to be the most genuine tasting tangerine drink that I've ever come across. Many of them taste sort of artificial and leave a really weird taste afterwards, but this is really genuine. And if you're into milkshakes, they do a great range of those as well. All the classics: vanilla, banana, strawberry, hazelnut. Hazelnut's my favorite, by the way. And of course, as I work with them as a partner to my channel, you can get a discount of 10% using the code Barrister. Or if you like a more straightforward discount of £5, just use the code Barrister5. If you're a newcomer to Holy, I suggest you go with their Starter Set Deluxe, which will give you a range of flavors and one of the shakers as well. So do check out Holy, linked below. I love them. I think you'll love them too. But, as I mentioned, the half-truths from this government. Now, I did say that Shabana Mahmood was going to be a little bit more robust on this illegal migration situation. Now, I think that I'm right in that she is saying the right things, albeit that there are some half-truths in it. She is saying some of the right things. Whether it actually translates into some physical action to actually deal with the issue is another question. But she's penned an article in The Sun, it would appear, and she says here, the latest small boat numbers are shameful. So taking a look at her article in The Sun here, Shabana Mahmood, the truth is, she says that migrants are coming to Britain because they believe we're the most generous country in Europe. This Labour government has picked up a broken system and got things moving again. Now, I'm not going to disagree that the system was broken. It was broken under Conservatives, but we have to look at the situation as it now stands. Now, she said, today's small boat numbers are shameful and the British people deserve better. They contain a lesson. We must go further and faster to secure our borders. Now, unless they physically do anything about it, drag them back to France safely, they could safely drag them back to France and say to France, look, they came from France, they're coming back to France, tough. It doesn't matter that we don't have the Dublin Agreement anymore, because even under the Dublin Agreement, it meant that they could come back our way as well. As it happens, that's really what's happening with this one in, one out deal. We've had that one guy that's come back having been sent back to France. Now, she says the Conservative government lost control of the borders, which is a fair argument. She says the removal of those here illegally collapsed, which is a fair argument. She says that they bet the house on the Rwanda scheme, spending £700 million over 2 years, and the result is that only 4 people, all volunteers, were sent there. Now, one might argue there that it wasn't really given enough time to actually work out, and 700 million over 2 years is a lot less than £6 billion a year that is currently being spent overall on the asylum system. She says, I'm yet to check the figures, but it appears right that 83,500 people arrived between April 22 and the last election, but coincidentally, 35,000 have arrived this year in the UK illegally. But then here come the half-truths. She says, we've removed 35,000 with no right to be here in the first year alone, the largest number in 6 years. Now, this is not entirely accurate. Now, whilst there probably are 35,000 that have left the UK that had no right to be here, only 8 or so, I think it's 8,600 or so from memory, have been enforced removals. The rest have been voluntary. In other words, they've either overstayed and just left of their own accord with not so much as a reminder, or they've had a letter to say, oi, you know, you're over your visa stay, you need to leave, and they've left, or they've been given a threat of deportation, all sorts of other threats to be forcibly removed and so on, and they've just decided to leave. So only 8,000 or so have been enforced removals, which is great, but that's not the 35,000 that you are told that it is. Now, here's another half-truth. It says, a few weeks ago, we signed a deal with the French. For the first time in history, those who arrive by small boat can be sent back to France. That is not true either, because they could always send them back under the previous Dublin Agreement, although they could come back to the UK as well. And in theory, they could have just sent them back to France and said, look, they came from France, they can come back to France. She says that sends a vital message. It tells those planning to cross the channel in a small boat that the risk is just not worth it. But again, that's not really true, is it? Because the fraction of those coming across that would be sent back under this one-in, one-out deal with France is really not a deterrent. Now, this is not me being anti-migrant and unsympathetic to those who are genuinely fleeing a war-torn country or so on, but the 35,000 coming here over this year alone, I just don't genuinely think that all of them actually flee a war-torn country. But this is the half-truth. It says that those coming here, that the risk is not worth it because they might be sent back to France. That is just not true, because when they come here, they do get the hotel, they do get the food, they do get all this sort of stuff, and it is worth it for them. That's the bottom line. It clearly is worth it, and they will keep coming. And if anyone's sent back to France, I am quite sure that the smugglers are just going to say, no problem, we'll give you a free ride back again, which appears to have happened already. She says by handing tough new counter-terror powers to law enforcement this year, we can also be hitting criminals behind the trade harder than ever. That's great, but again, I just don't think overall it's going to make that much difference, because it's a bit like whack-a-mole. You take one down, another one will pop up at its place. We must go further. We need to remove illegal migrants out of this country faster, etc. She says, I'm furious at some of the ridiculous legal challenges that are used to stop us deporting people. Yes, well, they need to change the law then. And if Labour has a majority, this is what really irritates me about these things. They could, if they wanted to, change the law. Because if they just said, right, here's a new law, ECHR does not apply to those who are challenging a deportation order. That would be it. It would give absolutely no remit whatsoever for the judges to say, well, ECHR does apply to this claim, and therefore, they don't like the chicken nuggets in their home country, or they might be made to shave, or they might be persecuted because I think the latest one was the Taliban would frown upon the crime that they've committed here. These are, frankly, with great respect to everyone involved, including the judiciary, these are ridiculous excuses. They are, as Shabana Mahmood put it, ridiculous legal challenges that are used to stop us deporting people. The only way around that is for them to change the law. Now, this is why I'm calling this out, really, to say if they really, really do want to sort this problem out, and they do want to make a difference, and they do want to go further and faster, and they do want to stop at nothing to secure the borders and make this happen, they need to do two things. They need to, one, change the laws so that these cannot rely on ECHR to stay in the country with these, quote, ridiculous legal challenges. Now, I don't want anyone criticizing me for using that language, because this is Shabana Mahmood's language. They are ridiculous legal challenges. I happen to agree with it, but that's not a reason to criticize me for saying that. I genuinely think so, and it's my opinion, and I'm allowed to say so. But it happens to be the opinion of our Home Secretary now. But the other problem that we've got is this, because we have those that come here illegally, they claim asylum, and then commit horrendous offences while they are here, such as this one here posted by Adam Brooks here, saying that this asylum seeker who sexually assaulted 3 women spared jail. And this, I believe, is the story here, because this asylum seeker avoided an immediate prison sentence after he assaulted 3 women. He's originally from Syria. He was resident of 4 Points Hotel in Surrey. So he's in a nice hotel in Surrey at the time of his offences. He was convicted on the 20th of August, 3 counts of sexual assault against 3 different women between May and June. So literally, I presume he's not here that long because he's still in a hotel, and within a matter of months, he's committing several offences against these women. But then he was given a 6-month prison sentence, suspended for 2 years, and ordered to undertake 200 hours of unpaid work. Now, obviously, if he doesn't comply with those licence requirements, then he could be sent to prison for it. But here's the worst thing. No remorse. One of the women told the court, I'm particularly looking at men to remember what they are wearing in case something like this happens again, and I need to describe them. This is not right. I should not have to feel and act in this way. During sentencing, the judge told the court that Al Aswad, who will now reside in Essex, claimed to be unfamiliar with UK laws regarding physical contact, and suggested that the brakes on his bicycle were faulty. The judge told him, you tried to suggest that the physical contact occurred as you tried to move the women away to avoid a collision and denied any gratification for these acts. You showed no remorse at the times of these offences, showing no remorse but putting your finger up to one of the women and blowing another a kiss. This guy apparently has a wife and a child that he's no longer in contact with, and was sentenced to 40 days rehabilitation activity and was made the subject of a Essul harm prevention order, whereby he's got to wear a monitoring tag. He's also been banned from using a bicycle or scooter in a public place because he used this as an excuse to touch women, and it's got the ability to track his GPS location, etc. One of the victims told the court that they were disappointed with the sentence he received, and I agree, and I think the vast majority of the public agree. Now, we also need, coming back to the point here, we also need our Home Secretary and the government in general to look at the sentencing guidelines and the Sentencing Council and all of this sort of stuff, because if they take any of this seriously, they should remove the likelihood of anyone committed of these kind of offences, in particular if they show no remorse and they make up excuses and they are just flouting our laws and treating us like idiots. They absolutely should not get the leniency of a suspended sentence. That is just my personal view, and you might agree. Let me know in the comments if you agree with that, or let me know in the comments if you disagree with that and you think that, no, they shouldn't go to prison for this kind of offence, which, even as I say it, I think most people will think that this kind of offence against 3 women with no remorse, in particular when they are making up excuses, flouting the laws, and just saying, well, I didn't really understand, which I think is nonsense, frankly. I don't buy that. I don't think the judges buy that. But all the same, let's not necessarily blame the judge here, and I'll tell you why. I'm not just defending the judiciary because I'm a barrister. I'm independent. If I want to, I can criticise the judiciary as long as I do it in a respectful way, and this is what we do in court, actually. If we criticise a judgment or a judge for making a certain ruling or whatever, that's what we do as barristers. But I'm saying here, don't necessarily blame the judge, because the judge is following the sentencing guidelines, and the sentencing guidelines will give a list of mitigating and aggravating circumstances and how to consider whether this sentence should be suspended. And in this case, it's been suspended. And if not, then it might be appealable. And his defense team, any defense team, should fight as fiercely as they can for their client. Whether you agree with what they've done or not is irrelevant. The whole point of fair representation is that they fight for their defense. So any legal team would use the sentencing guidelines and all of the criteria and say, this should have been suspended under the current guidelines and the current rules. If they are changed, and if our government takes it seriously, and if our Justice Secretary, David Lammy, takes it seriously, then they should overhaul these, if not scrap them entirely, and say these kind of offences straight to jail, because that's how we should deal with these things. Just like knife crime. We had the recent case where, albeit the guy was very upset because someone was burning the Quran, he said, I'm going to kill you. He walked away and came back with a bread knife and then started slashing at him. He didn't go to prison. Now, likewise, if we're going to get serious on knife crime, we should absolutely 100% be sending those people straight to prison to send a message that if you are convicted of knife crime, straight to prison. If you're convicted of these kind of crimes, straight to prison. That's how it should work. Likewise, we should get tough with anyone that's coming here illegally, straight back to France. No questions asked, and I guarantee that they would stop virtually overnight. Just my views, but let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.